everyone, this is Hamilton County Commissioner Alicia Reece. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the Hamilton County and Bengals ownership lease. And so I just thought I'd take a moment today because people have asked, what is in the lease? Because the lease was signed in 1997. So just to give you a quick recap, in 1996, the voters went to the polls to vote on whether or not to build 2 brand new stadiums with a sales tax increase. And many people voted yes. I mean, it passed because people wanted to keep both the Reds and the Bengals in Cincinnati. What happened after that is what people were not so happy about, which was, number one, it was advertised in all the advertisement that the homeowners would get a 30% property tax rebate each year on the Hamilton County portion of their bill. Well, they started out that way a little bit, but afterwards they didn't keep it, and I'm going to tell you why. The other thing that people were upset about was after they voted for it, they felt they got screwed because behind the curtains, behind the scenes, there's a thing called a lease. And this is something that the voters didn't like. In the lease, the document, the binding document that was put together by a board of county commissioners and negotiators who are no longer here. So the group that's here had nothing to do with this. However, because this is a 20-plus year lease, it doesn't matter who's in office, they have to abide by this particular lease. So let's get into it. Number one, why is it that the 30% is always a battle? Well, because we have to vote on it every single year, and it has to be done, I believe, before December the 1st. So every year, the administrator looks at the sales tax fund and says, oh, we won't be able to do it. However, because everything with the Bengals ownership is in a lease, we have to do everything that's in this lease, and the 30% is not in here. On the first page, it says, whereas on March 19th, 1996, the voters approved a 1/2 cent sales tax increase to fund the construction of 2 sports facilities. Then it goes on and says, and a property tax rollback, but it never says 30% that was advertised. So that's why it's always a battle. There are 3 names that go on the lease. Here are the people that voted for it. These are the people that voted for it. And they were commissioners at that time. It was May 29th, 1997, when the resolution was passed. Now, number 2, we get into the lease. It's the lease between the Board of County Commissioners of Hamilton County, Ohio, and the Cincinnati Bengals, Inc. So this is not the players. This is the ownership. And it says May 29th, 1997. Now, in this lease, it covers everything. And I will tell you that whoever was the lawyers for the Bengal ownership, they did their job. They did a great job. On the taxpayer side is where we got screwed. It is a lump-sided lease. And I'll tell you why. Because the taxpayers are paying over almost 94+% of all cost, where revenues, we're talking almost close to 100% of revenues go to the Bengals ownership. So we get the bills, they get the money that comes in, the revenue, the receipts go to them. Now, it talks about the term on page 21, and it talks about everything that is in this lease. It talks about the term. Why is the term important? Because this lease is set to expire on June 2026. We're getting ready to get up into that date. However, in this lease, they have up to 10 more years that they can say we're going to roll our extensions and keep this lease. And it's totally up to the Bengals ownership. There's issues of rent. People have asked me, do they pay rent? Well, there's a section 6.1. Section 6.1 talks about the rent. And what you'll find is that when it comes to rent, well, they did pay rent for the first 10 years, but the rent continued to go down. The first 9 years, actually, they paid rent. It was a base rent. They started at $1.7 million, and in year 9, they went down to $900,000. I've been asked by people, who do you know gets rent reduced? It's in here. So rent has been addressed. So there is no rent right now. Next, we went to an area called taxes. This is the area that a lot of people are interested in because a lot of you are talking about how your property taxes have gone up and we're trying to cut taxes down. Well, they have a section for taxes. It says payment of real estate taxes. It says if at any time during the term of the project is not exempt from imposition of real estate taxes and personal property taxes, the parties agree that such impositions shall be paid by who? The county. By the county. And currently they were able to also get a state law that also exempt them from sales tax on some of the upgrades that they want to make. And remember, this is being funded. The way we fund this is from what? A sales tax fund. But they're going to be exempt from sales tax. Isn't that something? The other thing that is in there that people may not know, they say, well, who pays all the bills? We pay the gas and electric, the water, all the utilities. It is in the lease. It is in the lease that we pay for all utilities. Let me get to it. Let's get to it. Well, that's on page 39. Counties shall provide for and shall purchase and pay for all utilities, including but not limited to heat, light, water, air conditioning, sewer, gas, steam, electricity, cable, and satellite television, telephone, telecommunications, or data communications, and other utilities provided for. We are on the hook. We're on the hook. It says it right here. There are so many components. There was we were presented a drawing of what the stadium possibly could look like. And it had these screens on the outside. And I had a lot of people say, we love the look of the screens, right? Let's go to the lease and find out if we have these screens, who has the control? Well, in this lease, they even have a section that says exterior signs. Teams shall control all advertising on or outside of the structure of the stadium complex and the stadium parking facilities, including, but without limitation, on any external message boards. So we can put these screens up, but we won't necessarily be able to have anything for the community because they would have the final say. They would control all of that. There's a section that talks about so many different things in here. Radio rights, of course, TV rights, we understand that. Now, there's a section that I found called County Use Days Revenue. And this section is important because we're supposed to get so many county days that we could use the stadiums. And to my knowledge, we have never used it in over 20 years of this lease. Of course, it goes over naming rights. We heard a lot about naming rights. And they renamed the stadium to Paycor. And I understand Paycor is trying to sell, so it'll have another name. But in here, it gets into all of the rights for naming rights. And it says if you stay up under a certain amount, then the county doesn't get anything. And guess what? We didn't we were never told how much they got from the naming rights. However, because Paycor is selling and is going to be a public company, we got to find out that, guess what? They stayed under the threshold, so the county could not get any money from it. And we're looking for money to try to cut the cost and get the burden off the backs of the taxpayer. That's what I'm looking to do. How can we reduce the risk and the burden and the exposure to the taxpayer? There's another component called management of the complex. The people who were here as county commissioners and lawyers, they gave away the management of the stadium. And so they have all the management rights and so forth, and we can't even get in there, even though we're the landlord, to get information because they control all of the management of the facility. They have everything you can think of. They've put it in here. They got enhancements. They've got future enhancements. It talks about the practice area. And there were some people who said, hey, we can put the arena at the practice area. Well, you got to go back to the lease because the lease says they have the first right to develop the practice area. So it's all in here. They have a chance to have 5 2-year extensions. They have to let us know by June of this year. That means that this lease that is upside down, no other NFL ownership team has this type of lease in the country, where there's no money down on the construction of the facility. So it was like a no money down for them. And where over 94% of the cost is with the taxpayers. And when it's time to make revenue, we don't have the revenue. But when it's time to pay the bills, we get all the bills. So what we're trying to do is get more of a fair and equitable deal that allows us to take some of the cost and burden off of the taxpayers' backs, be able to have something that's more fair and like they have in other markets, where they call it a market rate type of lease. But for me, to get some balance so that we can have a facility where everyone can also enjoy, and we can have a win-win, a win for the taxpayers and the win for the Bengals. But right now, we've got a lopsided deal. You wanted to know what's in here. It's available online. You can read it all for yourself. But at the end of the day, there's 3 names that'll be on this deal. And the way that it's being negotiated now, because we can't, the 3 of us, commissioners, cannot talk to each other. We cannot negotiate unless we're out in public. And so now you have the lawyers for the county and you got the lawyers for the Bengals ownership. And I'm telling you, I'm going to be working really hard to make sure that it's transparent and it's open and that you can follow every step of the way. So you got it. Here's the lease. Here's some of the terms. And we're trying to work out of something that is lopsided, upside down. It's going to be very tough because if someone's gotten over 94% of all revenue and everything that they want, it's hard for us from the position that we are negotiating from. But we're going to be working really hard to say we need a new lease, an equitable lease, and more of what I call a partnership versus the taxpayers are on the hook. It even has one section I forgot to hit about more events. I want to have more events because if we get more events, it can drive that cost down that's on the taxpayers and it brings in additional revenue. Well, there is a section here that says that both the county and the Bengals ownership is supposed to come together and agree to hire an independent group that knows how to get concerts and special events and all those kind of things. As you know, concerts, they don't do just one-offs anymore. They're on tours, 20 city, 30 city tours. We need some people who really understand that market. I've tried to find the paperwork of the agreement. I was told that there was a handshake and a smile. We can't find it anywhere, but we must get an independent group, because when the independent group comes, they have to open up the books to both sides. We would know how much money was made from everything from concessions to parking to any other things, ticket sales, and they would know the same thing. But the way we have it now, we only know what they tell us, and that's not the right way. And we're averaging 2 events a year outside of the football, and we're paying for the facility 365 days. If we can get somebody in there, we could get more events, more money coming in, and hopefully reduce the cost on the backs of taxpayers. So here it is, the lease. Take a look, and we'll keep you posted.